from one country to across the continent. So an interesting investment we actually just made recently is a company in India. We're an Africa-focused company, but we recognize actually India's importance in regards to pharmaceuticals. So we bought a company called Cellon, and we're merging it with a company in Egypt and then likely Morocco, and a few other companies in Africa. And my role is literally working with the CFO, CEO, Chief Development Officer to develop a pipeline of new drugs, to set up new distribution channels, to set up partnerships across the countries we want to enter into. So it requires, applying those entrepreneurial skills across different industries. And it creates quite an interesting angle because I work across many different countries. So today, actually in Nigeria, we have a fast food restaurant chain that we're launching an online delivery business for. So I'm working with the team down there to get things in shape with our software partners and test out our product end to end. But there's a lot of different, business strategy or entrepreneurial lessons that can be taken from one region to the other. And that's what we really rely on to help our CEOs and entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's great. So as an investor and you evaluate opportunities across international markets, what are some factors that are becoming increasingly important as you evaluate those opportunities?
Yeah, I think there's two angles there. One is brought on because of the pandemic, and it's the simple fact that a lot of the businesses' distribution channels changed significantly as a result of COVID. So that same restaurant in Nigeria, fast food chain, couldn't have people come into the shops during the pandemic, or we have businesses manufacturing in Morocco that couldn't distribute their products. So we really had to digitalize across, or support our companies in digitalizing across our whole portfolio. And one of the things we've really learned, and we're taking lessons from venture capital, which is slightly earlier stage than what we are, is there's huge benefits to businesses having scalability through technology. So as we're looking at new investments, we're looking at the opportunity that digital can play in their business model. That's particularly one point. The other point, and it really pertains to Africa and I think emerging markets, investors are increasingly looking at impact and sustainability as a lens in which they make an investment in emerging markets. So whereas previously we were just focusing on growing the business, perhaps, we're now also extremely focused on other, impact and sustainability measures, and how much potential does that company have for an impact, whether it's societal, whether that's climate, whether that's gender related, and that's part of how we add value to the companies as well.
Great. So focusing on the triple bottom line, and we'll soon get to the quadruple or quintuple line.
one step at a time
as well. So your global perspective is really the perfect foundation for your own company, Equipped, that you launched in 2020. So good things came out of 2020, Equipped. Can you talk a little bit about your own venture?
Yeah. So I started a venture called Equip. It's an ed tech company and recruitment firm, and we're essentially combining the layers of education and recruitment. And the biggest problem we're solving is the fact that a significant amount of people in the workforce feel that there's certain practical skills they didn't gain from certain levels of formal education. And sometimes when we speak to people, it's things like sales. There's things like certain levels of project management or certain technical skills. So what we do is we actually partner with companies to develop classes in conjunction with universities, and students can take classes directly from professionals at leading companies. And then we help those companies recruit those students. So we launched last year and working with an initial set of universities and companies. And the real insight for me in starting Equipped was focused on my many different experiences. I first worked in New York, then worked in London, and now working across Africa, and feeling like some of the best learning I gained was taking the university education, but applying the practical skills and mentorship that I got from managers, the entrepreneurs I work for, et cetera. So we're trying to take that same kind of insight and help students learn that knowledge earlier, so they're more prepared entrepreneurs, more prepared employees, and we're just kicking off that journey.
Great. So we'll loop back in a few minutes to you, Hubert. For now, we're going to travel from London across the Atlantic to the United States, where we meet Carrie Rich, a social entrepreneur based in the Washington, D.C. metro area. Carrie's venture, the Global Good Fund, has supported social entrepreneurs in over 35 countries across the globe. So welcome, Carrie. And can you take us through your journey in creating the Global Good Fund?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to be speaking alongside my esteemed colleagues here today. My journey starts, so I took an internship while I was in graduate school post-Lehigh, and I got the worst jobs in the hospital. So it was a hospital-based internship for health administration, and the jobs I got included cleaning the floor, mopping, folding the laundry, pushing the snack cart, and the best job I got was taking attendance, because everyone in the room had to introduce themselves to me. And who should walk into the room but the CEO of this multi-billion-dollar healthcare delivery system. And I learned that he had been, while growing this large health system, simultaneously growing community infrastructure in Haiti over the course of 25 years. And I thought, this is someone I really want to learn from. But how do I get a meeting with the CEO of a big company when I'm the intern mopping the floor? And so I figured everyone asks the CEO of a healthcare company about healthcare. So I went to his assistant and asked if I could have a meeting about living a life of purpose. And he said yes. And he actually ended up creating a job opportunity for me out of that conversation, and doing some writing projects together. And as a result, I had the opportunity to work for the CEO of a large company. And what I learned was that when you have that opportunity, it's quite a privilege, and you get growth and leadership development that other people simply don't have access to. And so I went to him one day and said, I'm so lucky. I get to work for the CEO of a big company, and there's a lot of young people out there who work really hard, have a strong moral compass, but don't get this kind of opportunity. So what if we found young, hardworking, entrepreneurial people like me and paired them with experienced business executives like you who have a heart of gold, and pair those two groups with some targeted capital as a catalyst for social good? So that's what co-founded the Global Good Fund about 9 years ago. And what the Global Good Fund does is identify high potential young leaders around the world who are using entrepreneurship for social good. We work across the United States and in 40 countries globally. And to date, we've supported about 200 entrepreneurs who have raised over $115 million in venture capital, and created about 4,000 jobs in some of the most overlooked communities around the globe, and impacted 9 million lives to date. And the way we do that is we believe that if you invest in a high potential leader, that leader will in turn grow her or his business and positively impact society. So that's my story about the Global Good.
That's awesome. That's great. So through the years, you've had feet on the ground, you've been working in real time with entrepreneurs, and you've been able to see the needs that they have and the needs that they have emerging over time. Can you talk about how that observation led to the development of a second venture out of your portfolio?
Yes. So about 5 years ago, traditional venture capitalists, or VCs, started approaching the Global Good Fund, asking for deals to invest in. And this was eye-opening for us, because these were not impact investors. These were traditional VCs looking for equity opportunities. And we had great opportunities for them to invest in, because our focus is leadership development. And then once we're successful at leadership development, we're effectively taking a year of a fellowship program that's entirely philanthropic to de-risk the company. There's executive business mentoring, coaching, capital in the form of philanthropy, peer networking, curriculum. And then these VCs would come in and take the best deals, which was great for the VCs, obviously, great for the entrepreneurs, because they got access to capital that the nonprofit didn't provide. And the Global Good Fund was sort of standing there holding the bag saying, what just happened here? And so 4 years ago, we decided to launch the Global Impact Fund, which is a sister for-profit venture capital fund that exclusively invests in for-profit social impact companies. So companies that can produce market-leading returns and positively change the world simultaneously. That company has been in existence 4 years. We've completely deployed the capital. And when we picked our heads up last summer, realized that 80% of the companies that we invested in were led by Black, Brown, and women entrepreneurs. And all of the companies are actually performing well, which is much better than you would expect in a VC fund. And so our investors said, what's next? And we've launched a second fund, Global Impact Fund 2, which provides these opportunities for impact investment at scale.
That's great. And I know in the audience, we have entrepreneurs who have experience, we have budding entrepreneurs, we have students. So a little bit later in the Q&A, we'll talk about de-risking, and I think all of you will be able to give some perspective on that. So another question for you, Carrie, at your vantage point, working with entrepreneurs around the world, what's your vision for entrepreneurship, for social entrepreneurship?
I am hopeful that there is no category of social entrepreneurship in the future. And what we're seeing now is that large corporations, established financial institutions, as well as tech companies and a variety of other businesses are understanding that it's actually a fundamental principle of business to incorporate social impact in the work that they do. And so we think that the most important issues of our time will be addressed by leadership, and we need leadership that's committed to social impact, no matter what type of company folks are working for. So my hope for the future and vision for the future would be that social entrepreneurship stops becoming its own category and gets more intentionally built into cultures of social impact throughout businesses more broadly.
And I think I've heard you say profit and purpose need to be married and work together.
Yes.
Yes. So now we're gonna hop on SpaceX as a Zoom call and zoom up to outer space and look at the globe from above. And in doing so, we can see, the three of you working on your respective continents, and we have a chance to look at a couple big issue questions for the three of you on the panel. So the first question is related to strategic partnerships. And these are often a cornerstone of new venture growth. So can you take some time to talk about how international strategic partnerships have supported the growth of your ventures and the multiple ventures that you're involved in? Carrie, we'll start with you.
Great. So the most obvious way that global partnerships have worked with us is the Global Good Fund has 250 grassroots partner organizations that we depend on, and they depend on us to spread the message when we're recruiting for social entrepreneurs. So when we have a call for applications through the Global Good Fund, we get over 3,000 applicants a year to choose 12 Global Good Fund fellows. And we do that by relying on grassroots organizations across the country and all over the world who put out the message that there's this opportunity for personal leadership growth in partnership with the Global Good Fund. The second way that's really helped grow the organization is partnering with global corporations. Examples of these companies have included companies like Johnson & Johnson and Smithfield Foods that are, Microsoft is another example, that are globally present and have a commitment to doing good and want a solution that's values oriented and has a bow wrapped around it. So for example, with Johnson & Johnson, we were able to support health social entrepreneurs around the world. With Smithfield Foods, we were able to support veteran entrepreneurs. And with Microsoft, we've been able to provide our services in a different format, where instead of providing a fellowship program, we're actually training their Microsoft employees on how to build a culture of social impact internally so that they're great stewards from a social impact culture standpoint with the community globally.
Yeah, great. So some of those common themes we see with you, Hubert, and the work you're doing with Equipped, can you talk about some of those international strategic partnerships?
Yeah. So, I mean, as we're starting our journey with Equipped and scaling across companies, I think, the lessons I've learned is partnerships are so important in terms of amplifying a brand's reach and message. And it really couldn't reach those levels of distribution without working with those partners. So, I mean, as simple as, for example, when we first kicked off Equipped and teaching classes taught by professionals, we actually started working with Lehigh, and we piloted a number of different classes with students. And interestingly, some of those students were in the US, some of them were across the world. And we worked with the companies on the other end, places that I've worked with in the past, like I previously worked at EY and Credit Suisse, in order to put those classes together. And as we chart the future towards growth, we're relying on those same companies to help port our platform across markets, across different universities, across different parts of the country, and you really couldn't do it without them.
Great. So we'll jump over to you, Prateek. Can you talk about some of your international strategic partnerships?
Yes, the very first partnership that comes to my mind is my association with Cricket All-Stars, which was the first ever cricket event in the American soil that was organized by legendary cricketers Shane Warne and Sachin Tendulkar. So I was part of the logistics, operation, and sponsorship department. So the connections that I've built, 5 years ago are still very important. That sets the basis for some of the business activities that we do around the world and also in India. And we also work with Southern Australian Cricket Association in Adelaide for an organizational partnership where they have introduced our product offering into their pilot program. And the other biggest partnership we are in pursuit is with SG. SG stands for Greenlands, which is the biggest cricket equipment manufacturer. They're responsible for producing 80% of all the cricket goods and equipment across the world. So we're in the process of exploring a sales and distribution partnership with them. So these are some of the top partnerships across the board, right from business to manufacturing to distribution, that we are currently working on.
Great. So, so any other thoughts on strategic partnerships from the panel in terms of recommendations for the audience, in terms of identifying or establishing some early stage strategic partnerships? So Carrie, any suggestions from your experience?
Some of my greatest partnerships have been, personally established in some of the most unexpected places. So I shared with you in the beginning, taking attendance at a meeting and establishing a partnership there. But then globally for the organization, obviously not during COVID times, but meeting people in unexpected settings. So on an airplane, on a train, actually talking to people and hearing what they're all about and why they're traveling has led to strategic partnerships that have provided financial opportunities for the organization, mentorship opportunities, et cetera. And then I think also the idea that, we're working on a partnership now that's several years in the making. So appreciating that, strategic partnerships take a long time. And following up with people actually matters, making sure that we appreciate and express gratitude when meeting someone and documenting that interaction so that we can go back and find it later.
Yeah, that's great. And as we get back to traveling, you've got a captured audience if you're on a train or a plane or whatnot. So leverage that time period for sure. So another question for the panel, and then I'll jump to some Q&A from the audience. And I just learned through the voice in my ear, the breakout rooms aren't going to work today. So what we'll do is have the audience post in the chat and make sure you reference the question to all panelists in the chat. And then I'll pull from those and ask the group questions throughout the second half of today. But before we get to those in the chat, you all have a common thread of Lehigh as well. And looking at your Lehigh experience as a student and also as an alum, can you talk about what impact the Lehigh community has had when your start and your growth as an entrepreneur? And we'll start with you, Pratik.
Yes, absolutely. Baker Institute to start with, Lisa Getzler is here. So they were the first ones to identify and give us any opening. So that's first. And, working with Fab Lab in the Lehigh Valley and Lehigh University Alumni Network with Sunit Kohli giving us introductions to people across India and across the globe. And then we still continue to work with marketing partners and legal partners from the Lehigh Valley area, where we first started off as a company. And then KIZ with Lehigh Valley Economic Development Center with the technology transfer grant. So those are some of the early foundational stones for our company. And that's how Lehigh Valley area and the university has helped us build a strong core foundation for us.
Yeah, and Pratik, to delve a little deeper, can you talk about the experience you had in the summer after you finished the Master's in Technical Entrepreneurship, the work with the Baker Institute?
Yes, Baker Institute Student Idea Accelerator. I mean, you have all the theoretical knowledge that you can gain from the TE program, but then once you start executing them or putting them to practice or use, you need another platform. So Baker Institute's Student Idea Accelerator really gave us that platform where you accelerated the 12-month program into a 6-week program where you start putting everything to use, right from product development to marketing, branding. At the end of the program, you had a demo day where you had to have a product, if not a fully functional commercial version. You still needed to have something that you could show it off to people, convey the message, or at least help know people that you're building up towards something. So those were some of the activities where you fast tracked, where you crunched down the timelines in terms of just getting through the process of the entrepreneurship was something that was really helpful.
So Hubert, can you talk about the impact Lehigh has had on you through the journey?
Yeah, I think it's a great, love answering the question. I think for me, it's very simple. And I was speaking to Lisa before the call, I first got exposure through the Eureka business venture competition and entered that with, my flatmate at the time. That person is actually the partner I'm working on in this startup now, almost 10 years later. So it's given me a great network of friends, of supports, of alumni that I actually, get help with to this day. And they're always willing to kind of have a conversation and have a discussion and help me think through a problem. I think that's the biggest benefit. But just going back to the actual trigger of Eureka, it triggered in me the interest to want to do something entrepreneurial in my career. So I really kind of hold on to that initial synthesis and kind of keep that with me. The network now from alumni and students is just an added benefit to that, which I continue to leverage.
Great. And then Carrie, the Lehigh impact.
I had a wonderful experience at Lehigh, in part because Lehigh provided an opportunity to do things that I don't know that I would have had at another university. So as an example, I did not study anything related to what I'm doing now at Lehigh. My degree was in science, technology, and society, which was an interdisciplinary Bachelor of Arts degree. And when I went to my classes one semester, not one other student showed up for class. No one else had registered for the classes I signed up for. And so I walked into the room and it was just me and the professor. And this happened in numerous classes in a semester. And I looked around and I said, well, is anyone else coming to class? And the professor told me that, you're the one who signed up. And rather than cancel class, this professor had us meet for 3 hours every week and use the Socratic method to read books, talk about them, discuss big issues happening in the world, and then go out in the community and do something. And that push to go out and do something and that exposure, my idea of doing something was going to volunteer at the local community health center and hospitals. gave me the confidence to be able to do my best job at mopping the floor and be able to do my best job at folding the laundry and taking attendance because it was in a healthcare setting and I was comfortable being there because Lehigh gave me the opportunity to do that. And I was comfortable having conversations that weren't what you would typically have in an academic setting, perhaps. And so I found the opportunity to connect big ideas in different ways through Lehigh and to think critically and differently about what was going on in the world. And for that, I'm very grateful to Lehigh and the professors, the faculty, and the community at large.
Great. And as you know, as the audience knows, this is the first of a three-part series. So you'll continue to learn about the connections Lehigh is making with entrepreneurs around the globe to support not just those that are on the panel, but those in the audience as well. So I'll go through a number of questions that have appeared in the chat that have been emailed ahead of time or show up in the Q&A. So I'll start with one from Arpita, and she asks, I have seen the ratio of female to male entrepreneurs is much better in the case of social entrepreneurship than commercial. What do you think are the reasons behind seeing more women in the leading positions in social enterprise? Carrie, do you want to tackle that one?
With no facts to confuse me, I think there's an inclination for everyone to want to make a difference with their lives and have their lives matter and be about something greater than themselves. In the nonprofit sector and in the social entrepreneurship sector, there is, as you point out, a higher ratio of women. That is not consistent with where the funding goes. So actually, it's less than 3% of funding goes to women-led social enterprises. And so I think part of the challenge there is really making sure that more diverse in a variety of ways. There's more diversity in terms of leadership. And what we're finding is that when there's a focus on diversity in leadership, the money tends to follow. And then you'll see diversity of all kinds of founders, including overlooked founders of a variety of backgrounds, people with disabilities, LGBTQ, Black, Brown, women. But I think the main opportunity here is that all people care about making the world a better place. All people care about living a life that's greater than themselves. And we have to create opportunities and a platform for overlooked founders, including women, to have access to capital.
Great.
If I could actually just add a few sentences, because that's actually, as an investment fund, it's something we're trying to tackle, because we have about 20-something companies in our portfolio. Only one is led by a woman, and we're taking a conscious effort now to see how do we actually source more female-led companies, or how do we put more women on boards or management teams. And I think it's something we're just trying to pick our own biases and try to see how do we be conscious about changing that. So I think it's one of those things that is probably something a lot of other funds, maybe funds that are similar to the one I work at, are doing, but it's I think it's definitely becoming more front of mind in today's world.
Great. So, we're looking at female entrepreneurs from the founding and also the investment perspective. But Pratik, I'll turn to you and looking at female athletes. So, for example, as those of you in the audience know, cricket has a large following of males, but an emerging following with women across the world. And Pratik, can you talk about, from a product development and a customer standpoint, like how you're expanding the reach of Free Bowler?
Yeah, absolutely. Female athletes, in fact, they lay the foundation for the product development in a lot of ways, because there are mothers who are involved who want to train their kids, because a lot of times dads don't end up getting time to take their kids to the practice sessions, training sessions. So a lot of times moms accompany their kids to training sessions, and they're a part of the entire process, so they understand what's going on, what the kid wants. And then we have also seen cases where moms help kids with their training if they want to put up a training aid in their homes. Of course, dads do a lot of heavy lifting as well. So in that sense, we get a lot of questions from elderly women as to how we can make the product improvising better, so that it's just not oriented or inclined towards the product being used just only by men, but also everybody who want to. So that's one perspective from a product development standpoint. But from a female athletes and that connecting that with the product development, definitely there's a lot of scope for one innovation, and the women's cricket is picking up. It's the next best thing that's going to happen ever. I mean, just the sheer volume of the population of following that's growing across the world, and it's going to be a huge model for people to look up to. So yeah, a lot of exciting times ahead for cricket, female cricket as a whole.
Great. So we have the next question is for Mr. Dagbo. We'll go formal now. And this is from Mary. So she asks, what are the particular challenges for business and entrepreneurship in Nigeria, and what are some of the special opportunities there?
Sorry, what are the challenges?
Businesses in Nigeria.
Yeah. So again, take lessons from the business we're invested in there. It's literally like a KFC of Nigeria. And the company has like about 150 outlets throughout the country. And, I've learned a great deal from that business. And one of the best things the CEO likes to describe it is like, if you want to do anything right in Nigeria, you have to do it yourself. And what I mean by that is like a business that sells, something as simple as fast food. They need partners like logistics, they need warehousing, they need, food sourcing, etc. But they've really struggled to find reliable partners, and it's often they've had to vertically integrate and build these operations themselves. Their own logistics business, their own warehousing facilities, rather than relying on partners because they're often unreliable or quality is not there. And that's why we're even launching our own online delivery business instead of working with the Uber Eats or et cetera, Jumia's of the world. So I say that because it translates to opportunities in which, if we're able to provide a very quality and consistent product and service, especially to B2B other companies, people will really want to work with you. So if we could find a very reliable logistics partner that can provide quality consistently, we'd more than happy be willing to give them our business and pay them for it. So I think, the opportunities are really finding your niche in a certain industry, or understanding what are the key opportunities companies really want to outsource if you're looking at a B2B business, and developing a business where you can provide that service sustainably at a high quality and consistently. And you'll find really great companies will want to work with you over the long run, because that's what we're constantly looking for.
Great. So next question up for Carrie. What should one do to be considered and receive support from the Global Good Fund?
So the best way to learn about the offerings that the Global Good Fund provides is to sign up for our newsletter or follow us on social media. So our website is www.globalgoodfund.org. And we have a newsletter which provides all kinds of announcements, including opportunities unrelated to the Global Good Fund for social entrepreneurs. Our application for the 2021 fellowship will come out later this spring, and will be announced in our newsletter as well as on Facebook and Instagram. So you can follow us there and learn more about the application process.
That's great. So a question for the panel as a whole, and this is from Nishita. What advice would you give high school students? So Hubert, can we start with you?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm going to piggyback off what Carrie had mentioned, about learning and doing things early. And I think, for me, it was, simple things, whether it was, internships not even internships, just jobs in the retail sector, doing very basic things, being able to engage with customers and learn about business early. I think one of the first triggers for my interest in entrepreneurship, for example, was working at my uncle's flea market at his, retail shop selling clothing, and just getting that hands-on experience that got me interested in, how do you make a sale? How do you interact with customers? How do you plan and operate your business? And I think you can, as students, get so easily just stuck in just learning the conventional way of textbooks and classrooms and not actually trying to apply that. So, for high school students, I think the earlier you can try to leverage and apply the things you're learning by doing things and working with companies or finding mentors to help you, go through that route, and leveraging great organizations that do that, I think the better. And bring it all the way back to Equipped. And, what we're really trying to offer is that ability for people to take knowledge and actually find out how it's best applied. So I think it's just about high school students looking out for those resources and trying to grasp them as early as possible.
Great. So Carrie, any perspective for the youth, the emerging innovators?
Yes, I think doing the absolute best job you can at the opportunities you have in front of you. So whether it's participating in a sport or an extracurricular activity, some sort of club, making sure that you show up and are present in the most meaningful way you possibly can, because that's memorable for other people. And my other suggestion would be follow up. People remember when you write a thank you note, whether it's by email or incredibly, if you handwrite and mail a thank you note, people remember that. And you have an opportunity to do those little things right anytime in life. And to this day, I still try to do that. I still try to, stamp envelopes to the best of my ability. And I still try to send thank you notes and follow-ups in a timely, thoughtful way and make them personal. And I think that starts, at any age.
Excellent. So Pratik, I'll put a little spin on the question for you. So I know in your early days, you had a couple of decisions to make where your education was going to go and so forth. Can you talk about that? That may help out some of the high school and even the college students.
Yes, that's a great question, Professor Lehman. Once again, I think, at some point in my life, and that was back in 2006, around 15 years ago, things were much different from what it is right now. Today, there's definitely scope and opportunity for people if they want to pursue academics along with a professional sport. There's definitely people still could go on to make a living in both academia, as in professionally and as a career. So if they want to pursue that, for me it was a hard decision whether I had to pursue cricket or academics, and I had to choose academics because I had no other option. But then today there are a lot more options. I don't think people lose out on time. I don't think people lose out on the experience, the opportunity. People still could take up education and sports. So equally, there's a lot of time. I think people are much smarter in terms of managing their time and efforts and resources. So I would advise and suggest people to just take it up and do it. Nothing to look back. And of course, there are a lot more voices that would say one or the other. But I think if somebody is really passionate about what they're doing, I think they could pursue both. And I don't think they would lose out on anything. It's a great opportunity.
Great. So a question for Hubert, and Carrie and Pratik may have some additional thoughts. As you're looking at investment opportunities, what are some of the metrics you're using to measure impact? Do you quantify it? Do you get down to the granular level? Whether it's social impact, environmental impact, carbon emission impact, etc. And Hubert, I'll toss it to you.
I'm smiling because it's a challenge for us right now. We're just kind of getting started on that journey, and actually the three buckets we're looking at to measure we're on our third investment fund at the moment, and we're trying to measure three things around climate impact, second around gender, and then the third around job quality. So on the climate side, we're starting to measure carbon emissions, and literally starting from the basics to do that. And then on the gender side, it's literally, percent of female board representation, female management representation, female to male split in the company, things like that. And then job quality around retention, how many people are actually getting promoted? How many people are getting paid what they call a living wage in because some of these countries, the minimum wage is not a living wage in perhaps Nigeria or Algeria. So these are the things we're measuring, consistently right now.
Carrie?
One of the greatest resources that we've found to be really helpful is called GIN. It's spelled GIIN. And what it is it's an international impact investing metric. So it stands for Global Impact Investing Network. And they actually have an entire catalog of social impact metrics, more than you would ever want to apply. But it's a really helpful resource. If you look at GIIN on the internet, you'll find many, many metrics to choose from in order to measure social impact indicators. What we do is we work with each entrepreneur to measure the metrics from a social impact standpoint that are specifically relevant to their industry. And then as a fund, we also have global indicators that are pulled directly from GIN. And the reason we went with this approach is because we spoke with a variety of impact investment organizations as well as nonprofit organizations on both sides of the house. And what we found was there was still a lot of work to do with regard to impact measurement, and we didn't want to make up any new metrics. We wanted to use globally accepted standards for impact measurement, which is why we went with GIN.
Excellent resource. Thank you for that. So from talking about financing and impact there, let's delve into product development. And I'll come back to you, Pratik, on this. Can you talk about the balance between adding features to a product versus figuring out the manufacturability and pricing? And how do you balance all of those in the mix?
Yeah, good question once again, Professor Lehman. It's always, we're trying to chase this chicken egg scenario. I think, yeah, with pricing, manufacturability, it's always, product development is always a forever process. We will continue to evolve product throughout the lifespan of the product and the company itself. So I wouldn't be much worried about adding features and benefits because that is something that comes from the customer. The market is the market. The market speaks as to what they want, what they're looking for. As long as we keep answering the questions, our customers, as long as we try and solve customer experience, I think that there lies the answer for what features do we want to add to a particular product. And having said that, product pricing, manufacturability, those are some of the things that needs to be considered. Again, pricing comes from a lot of market research, trying to find a sweet spot for a global product or if it's a regional product. So that again, the market dictates as to what price it wants to make the purchasing decision. Manufacturability for a product-based company is, I think, really important. Even for us, we've invested a lot, put a lot of emphasis on getting our product right. Making sure that we provide the best experience possible. So whether one's manufacturing on their own or exploring contract manufacturing partners, design for manufacturability is a key component of the product development process. I think that needs to be attacked first, and other things follows after that.
That's great. So we have time for 2 more questions, and then I'll toss it back to Shashir to give us a look at what's coming up in the second and third event in the series. So the first of the 2 questions is about de-risking. And this comes from a serial entrepreneur that's in the audience. So what is one thing that you've done or plan to do to reduce the risk of your startup and maximize the chance of a successful exit? So look at it either for your own company or what you look at with your portfolio. And Carrie, do you want to tackle that one first?
Sure. So I appreciate the question. I represent both a nonprofit in the Global Good Fund and a for-profit with the Global Impact Fund. At the Global Good Fund, we provide leadership services. And we have every employee, including myself, goes through the same exact experience that we expect our fellows to pursue. We all do a 360 leadership assessment designed for social impact leadership. We all have a coach. I meet every other week with my coach for years. I have a separate committee of individuals who advise and mentor me, in addition to a board and a variety of advisory boards. On the nonprofit side, picking a great co-founder was really important. We've been around 9 years now, so we're expecting to stick around. And so those are some of the processes on the nonprofit side. On the for-profit side, I'm the managing director of an impact fund. It's a VC fund, traditional 2 and 20 model, and I have no finance background, but the investors are trusting of me to manage this fund. And the way to de-risk that opportunity for investors was to surround ourselves with phenomenal mentors, advisors, vendors, investment committee members who have a very solid track record that's not only aligned from a financial standpoint, but also from a values alignment standpoint. So the message here is surrounding myself with great people has been critical for having a longstanding nonprofit that's poised to grow in the future, and a for-profit that's viable and able to help other businesses scale in addition to ourselves.
Excellent. So Hubert, de-risking.
Yeah. If I can answer a question from both my venture and work at the private equity fund. So I think, my ventures in a similar way, we started as me and my co-founder who also went to Lehigh, and finding the right talent to actually help support us. So we brought on a strategic advisor who's actually built a similar adjacent business in this field to help us navigate scaling this company. And that's working through the different sales cycles, understanding how you position the offering and how you build a business model that's sustainable. And that's something we've been laser focused on, a business model that's not just going to get funding, but that's actually going to be sustainable because the economics work, the unit economics work. And that support is all coming through getting the right advisors and team members on board to provide us that support. So completely echo what Carrie was mentioning. And then translating that to, work with our portfolio companies across the private equity fund, because in similar ways, a lot of them are entrepreneurial led, were started maybe 10 years ago, but now they have ambitions to add new ventures onto them. And, so one of the first things we did, for example, again, using the fast food chain in Nigeria, is we brought on a team, guys who were formerly at, whether it was Deliveroo or Just Eats or Uber Eats, to help us navigate how do you set up and launch this company? What are the pitfalls that you went through that you can share, so we can properly build a sustainable business? And that's de-risked and help us avoid a lot of the challenges that we probably would have ran into if we didn't have that team advising us. So I think it's a lot about the team and significantly about how you leverage partnerships, to our earlier point, that can help, get a lot more scale a lot quicker through, when you're launching a new venture.
Right. So then a final question, and Pratik, we'll start with you on this final question of the day. So the three of you are all on different continents, and you're viewing the world entrepreneurship ecosystem from different perspectives. What industries or sectors do you see as hot right now? And what industries or sectors do you see as emerging from the continent that you're located on? So Pratik, we'll start with you.
Yes, personally, I feel, given the sheer population India has, and India is a young country, in 2020, it will continue to be a young country moving into the 2030 decade. With what's happened post-COVID era, health and fitness industry, sports industry setting great benchmarks for the sports and entertainment business globally. People are always inclined towards experiences, and with the kind of digital revolution that we are seeing, with more people gaining access to internet and information, I think these are the top industries. There's a lot of scope for innovation in these sectors, according to me, and the continent I live in.
Excellent. So Hubert?
So the question is the biggest investment opportunities.
Yeah, industries that are hot and industries that are emerging.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm perhaps more focused on the Africa continent and emerging markets, but we're seeing a huge amount of interest on the fintech side, scalable financial solutions that can, be accessed by not just wealthy users, but also, bottom of the pyramid or mass market. I think that's probably one of the biggest ones. And then I think, to my point earlier around acquiring the company in India, huge areas around pharmaceuticals, especially off the back of this COVID pandemic, not just pharmaceuticals, but companies that can provide distribution to these products across just not cities, but rural areas. So those are the really two big themes we're focusing on at the moment.
Yeah, so really, really great insight, Tom. So Carrie, hot industries and emerging opportunities.
Yeah, the three that have been consistently hot for us over several years have been health, education, and the environment, including agriculture. And echoing what Hubert said, financial inclusion is how we frame it, but that one's very much growing industry. And similarly, economic mobility has been a big opportunity from both a social impact and financial opportunity.
Excellent. And the one comment that you all made is about the people, whether it's the customers, the advisors, the board. And I just think that the chat that's been going on throughout today has been amazing. And this series is just going to help connect Lehigh alums and students and friends across the globe to interact with one another in more meaningful ways moving forward. So we've covered a lot of ground today, both in content and geography. And Prateek, Hubert, and Carrie, thank you. You inspire us all. And on behalf of the alumni, students, and Lehigh friends in the audience, we can't wait to see what you, the builders, are going to accomplish next. So I'll toss it to Shashir to wrap up and give us an entree to what's coming up in the next event.
Thank you, Mike, and to Prateek, Hubert, Carrie, and all the attendees. It was amazing today, really amazing. Looking ahead, the second in the three-part series is coming up on April 14. The focus will be on the environment, the global entrepreneurial ecosystems. And the final session on April 28th will be the spotlight, the talent, developing the next generation of global entrepreneurs. To learn more and register for future sessions, go to go.lehigh.edu/spark. We will again share the link with you for the registration. We look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you so much for being here today.